It's a positive film. It has heroes and villains, and that it essentially is a fun movie to watch. It's been a long time since people have been able to go to the movies and see a sort of straightforward, wholesome, fun adventure.
Well, it's a fantasy. It's not science fiction so much as it is space fantasy. And it's about people. It's finally about people and not finally about science.
The story, when you actually put it into words, is only so much nonsense to hang a great visual experience onto. It's the stuff that fairy tales are made of.
Sort of boiling down religion into a very basic concept. The fact that there is some deity or some power or some force that sort of controls our destiny works for good and also works for evil.
Marvellous, healthy innocence. Great pace, wonderful to look at, full of guts, nothing unpleasant. I mean, people go bang bang and people fall over and are dead, but, no horrors. A sort of wonderful freshness about it, kind of like a wonderful fresh air.
It's got whatever you want it to be. It's pure entertainment. It's like a roller coaster ride, and it can be interpreted as long as you enjoy it, which is the intention.
Hello, welcome to the Diecast. This is a 6-part series all about Star Wars diecast toys here on Generation Skywalker. Over the next 6 months, we'll bring you 6 shows delving into the world of the Micro Collection, the underrated West End games, Micro Machines, amongst many other things. But starting here in episode 1, we of course have to start with the vintage diecast ships. And who else will I get to join us is our good friend Andrew Norton, a diecast fanatic, a focus collector, and the man behind the great website resource vintagestarwarsdiecast.co.uk. Good evening, Andy.
Evening, Stu. What a welcome. Thanks very much for that.
Oh, we're always good with diecast. I've spoken to you over the years on Vintage Rebellion around diecast. You've always promised me a book, which I still don't think is any nearer being published, no?
It's going to be an appendix to the Vintage Saga. I've go out with agreement with those guys. Now, I would absolutely love to do one. I really would. And I've actually talked to various people about the processes behind it. But the thing holding me back really is the photos. So then for those books to look really good, you need a sort of standardized photo. And I've got a lot of diecast, but there's a few key bits which I don't own. So I'd either need to pop round someone's house and get a photo of them in the same style as the rest of them. And unfortunately, I think most of those items are far overseas, either in Australia or Canada. So an expensive start to making the book. But I wonder, you never know. What's your space?
Now, this isn't going to be an interview where we look at Andy's collection. No doubt we'll venture down that line one day in the future. But this show is to take you through the world of vintage Star Wars diecast. So it's more of a guide for these toys rather than us focusing on you tonight, Andy.
That's fine, yep.
Now, the diecast range lasted between 1978 to 1980.
Correct. Probably, well, almost certainly run after 1980, but they weren't making any new ones after 1980. So you could still get it in the shops.
Still pick it up. And they released just 11 diecast ships in that time. Now, what I want to ask you first of all, Andy, you'd have done more research than most into this. Why was the line so brief and such a limited number?
So I've given a lot of thought to that. I think it's a scale issue. It's a little bit like the 12-inch line. The 3 3/4-inch toys are so popular that ships work. Ships are relatively affordable. Figures are cheap as anything back then, still pocket money. And then you've got this line of tiny spaceships that aren't even to scale with each other, that mums and dads are being asked to kind of splash out on for their kids. And speaking as someone who used to have some of these, we loved it. And, they worked. We didn't have a lot of the big ships, so they worked with our 3 3/4 inches. But if you had a die-cast X-Wing and you got your Luke Skywalker, you really want the bigger ship. That's my view on it. And then they realised sales weren't there. So come 1980, let's not make any more. I mean, what's also interesting is that they are called collectibles. The headers for the display bin say collector's edition on, and it's almost like they're selling them to collectors at that stage rather than kids to play with. We see that today with other toys that say that on them and that are designed as toys. So there might not be anything in that, but just something that crossed my mind. Who were these pitched at when they're there back in the day? The adverts are in catalogues with the other toys, but were they actually aimed at more aimed at adults as well as children, unlike the 3 3/4 line?
Yeah, we had a couple as children. We had the Falcon and the X-Wing, and a lot of people I know kind of say, when you speak to them, they had one or two. So they must have sold slightly all right, wasn't they?
I think so. And the fact there's so many around that if you go to any toy show now, there's always a land speeder missing its windscreen. That's that standard of any toy show, Star Wars or otherwise. And until recently, I was always seeing snow speeders and Slave Ones around as well, potentially missing parts there. So they don't seem to be any fewer of them than the figures around. I think they did sell well, but I guess maybe the ones that I'm seeing at these toy shows aren't, been there a long time, unlike the figures which would get snapped up.
They're pretty beaten, aren't they? When they're loose. It's difficult to find what I would call a nice loose example. Generally, when you look through eBay, and that they're always pretty chipped, Yeah,
they take a battering, particularly the plough car and the Imperial Cruiser, although a little bit of play wears the Imperial Cruiser seems to add to it. But yeah, because they get chucked in your box of toy cars back in the day as well, so they're all bashing together around there. It's a shame, but makes the hunt for a nice example all the better, though, doesn't it?
What I want to do is we've got the 11 ships. I just want to go through the 11 ships because most of them had like what you'd call a little feature, or what makes it playable, or maybe a little bit of they might have a character sitting in it. So if I could just take you through each one. So the land speeder, this has got what I think it was described as a floating ride, is it?
Floating ride, yes. Essentially, it's got the suspension that your Matchbox or Corgi cars would have had. You drop the front wheels down, and your car would bounce up and down for a little bit. It's got that mechanism in it. This is hardly unique in amongst the toy lines. It's a great little ship. It's most out of scale for the rest of them, I think, which is its biggest problem. I remember us having one of these when we were younger, and it didn't get a lot of play because it just didn't work with anything. If you got a Luke and 3PO, they're not going to fit in that, and it doesn't go with any of the other diecast ships. But it's a nice toy. As I mentioned just before, always missing their windshields now. That just pops out so easily, and quite often the back engine is snapped off as well. So.
And Luke in the driver's seat.
And it's great because it's largely British-made film. The the land speeder prop was based on a British car, wasn't it? So it was right-hand drive, which is why Luke's driving there.
Now, these were all part of Wave 1, weren't they? There was 4 of them. So you also had the X-Fighter in there. Now, we have one of these. I've still got it. It's pretty beat up now. Now, this did a bit more, didn't it?
That was good, yeah. It had the wings pop out into the X-Wing fighting action. And the cockpit, they didn't click into place like the larger ones where you press R2-D2's head in down to sort of to lock it into place and release it. They just sort of hold their shape quite well, and also had an opening cockpit. It was a nice little feature. Not that you could take Luke out, or not you're meant to take Luke out, but again, that's another issue with this one. Quite often missing the cockpit glass, but that's a lovely little toy, and scale wise, still not quite right. It's another one that looks like it's modelled on the larger ship rather than the actual ship in the film. It's got the proportions are very similar to the 3 3/4 inch ship, and Craig Stevens, I think, pointed this one out, that this, and is it the bigger one as well? I've actually got the red 3 markings.
That's right, yeah. Biggs is...
Yes, it's got the 3 lines on the wing. I mean, it's nice. You always say nice things about the website, but there's so much information from other people out there, that research and other people putting in their input. So it's little observations like that which kind of put all the information together. But it's a great looking show. I think Luke, the only thing wrong with it probably is the Luke figure. I always thought it looks a little bit like an orange Bespin Guard, and doesn't you wouldn't know it was Luke, would you?
Well, no, that's very true. So continuing on in Wave 1, you've now got the TIE Fighter. This is a great ship.
My absolute favourite, and it's what I had when I was a kid, and it's what got me into collecting diecast now. But again, it's another one that's modelled on the 3 3/4 inch ship. So where the battery compartment is on the back of the larger spaceship, which isn't in the film at all. It's a round body in the film. It doesn't have that bit that sticks out the back. The diecast version has the bit that sticks out the back, because that's how you remove the pilot. And then, oddities of oddity, the pilot is Darth Vader. So that's what he's doing in there. But it's a brilliant ship, and again, through this process, learning about these things. So in Britain, we only had the second issue ship. Never seen a first issue ship on a Palitoy card. Not that you see many of those anyway. The initial ships, the wings were very loose on them, so in fact they actually came with instructions how to. You get a pair of pliers and crimp the wings on to get them to be a bit firmer. So they redesigned that after a while, so that what looks like one of those little black ridged Lego pieces sticks out from the body, and the wings slot onto those. So the British ones are all like that. Whilst in America, there's a mixture of the two, and I've seen plenty of Americans be surprised when they've seen the later one, because they only had the earlier one as a kid. So that's what I really like about collecting toys, is that history of them and seeing what these processes are and the changes that they go through.
Absolutely fascinating. It's a great ship, isn't it? It is perhaps we will have you back on one day, because this is one of your focuses, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's I'm still one short of finishing a carded run, the elusive Meccano one, but it is so accurate. The scale is right on this one. We're talking about although it's modelled on the larger toy, the wings are much better scaled, and they used a whole bunch of these in Return of the Jedi when they were needing extra models for those big space battle scenes, which just shows how good it is, isn't it? The toy is accurate enough to feature in the film.
And then the final ship in Wave 1 is Darth Vader's TIE Fighter, which again is scaled down, isn't it, from the bigger toy?
Yeah, exactly the same. So it's got the bit that sticks out at the back, which you would have the batteries in the larger toy. So no batteries here, but that's what you grip to remove Darth Vader, who is correctly piloting this one. And again, I do absolutely love this one. Never had it as a kid, but the look is great. It's not very screen accurate. I mean, I for years, having had the 3 3/4 inch one as a kid, I was amazed when I saw detailed photos of Darth Vader's TIE Fighter and the Power of the Force 2 line. My kids, when they were younger, had one of those. And it's got a really solid body. I don't know if you can picture it. So it's got the cockpit, but all around it, the support for the wings are quite built up. It's quite a long body. This is just the normal TIE Fighter painted grey with curved wings stuck on it, rather than the hexagonal flat wings of the TIE Fighter. This one also has a change, quite a sort of infamous change. The first ones, they got very close to production line. So the first ones of these had a much smaller wing, which went through. There's examples carded with a smaller bubble on the correct card back. So got close to going out to shops, but was scrapped at the last minute. Someone decided that it didn't look right. The wings weren't proportionately correct, so they reissued it with these bigger wings. You can tell the difference between a small wing card back and the one that was released, because in that process Boba Fett came out. So the ones with the small wings on are 20 backs without Boba Fett, and the ones with the big wings on are 21 backs, unless you're in Canada.
Before we move off the Darth Vader TIE Fighter here, quite an interesting thing you've got down here that some people didn't know, I didn't know until I was browsing your website, is that this ship was used for the eyes in Dark Crystal of a character.
Yeah, it was one of the Skeksis. And again, this is this is not my observation. I've seen a few people refer to this over the years. I suppose the one bit of debate, is it the Darth Vader TIE, or is it a painted grey TIE Fighter? And I think unless you've got it in hand, you're not really going to be able to say. The fact that the Skeksis' eye is grey, I'm leaning towards it being the Darth Vader TIE. But if someone was to tell me, no, it's the TIE Fighter that's been painted, then I wouldn't argue with them. It's Skek Tech the Scientist, and I remember going to the cinema to see Dark Crystal. Absolutely loved it back in the day. I'm not seeing the new series yet, but that's on my to watch list. But it's just the story behind these toys and the ingenuity of these people involved with it all. It's just fantastic, isn't it?
It is.
All the connections. Watch Willow this weekend. Haven't seen that for years. No. And you look at the people on the credits, and it's just the Star Wars team, isn't it? And it's I just love it all, really.
So moving on to Wave 2, then everyone's favourite ship, Millennium Falcon.
It says it's got a lot of features. Arguably, it hasn't really, has it? It doesn't do a lot. The radar swivels, the gun swivels, and the legs go in and out. which is great, but for sort of play value, part of the legs are handy, but if the radar and the guns didn't swivel, I don't think anyone would mind too much. Again, as an accurate toy, it's far more to scale than the 3 3/4 inch one, where they've obviously had to condense that down. It could be an enormous toy if it was to scale, and so that's what they can do with the diecast line, which is, I suppose that's, talking earlier about being collectors' items. That's why I suppose they're more movie accurate, and that would look good on anybody's shelf, whether you're a kid or an adult back in the day. What's interesting actually about the early releases and the foreign releases of these ones is, and the diecast line seems to be just full of errors, far more so than 3 3/4 inch. Well, obviously, there's some classic errors in there, Forlom and Zuckuss being a very obvious one. But the Millennium Falcon and the Y-Wing both came out with this statement on the back of them saying Star Wars excitement with this finely detailed replica of the Empire's largest spacecraft. That's quite a big oversight. It was corrected on the Kenner version. The Palatoy didn't bother. I think they stopped selling them after a bit, so it just wasn't worthwhile. So it wasn't corrected there. But it adds to the charm, really. They're kind of rushing these things out. You can imagine back in the day, Star Wars, quick, get them off the presses, get them in the shops. No one's checking too closely, are they, for these sort of small details?
This was the first ship that came out in the box as well, which I think they display lovely. The 4 that come in the boxes like that.
And in the diecast line, it's one where you get the special offers as well. So there's not a lot, apart from packaging changes, there's not a lot extra on the diecast line. But the Kenner ones came with this special offer where they had these backdrops inserted behind the card inside.
That's
so
right.
Take your ship out and display it in front of a nice movie scene. Although with the Millennium Falcon, you'd have 2 Millennium Falcons in that scene. I've actually of those, that's the only one I've got.
We had the Falcon as children, and I always found it ideal because we had the cardboard Death Star as well. And it was the perfect size to sit in the hangar in there and fly out if recreating the film. But so next up is the Y-Wing. Now we start to get some nice features, don't we, in some of these ships?
The Y-Wing is brilliant. The main feature on that is the dropping bomb. And unfortunately, with any of these toys, that's the thing that gets lost because it gets dropped and never seen again. But the engines also remove, like the 2 TIE fighters, so you can simulate the battle damage. And it just looks beautiful. Interesting that this one is red paint on it rather than the yellow that the larger ship used. And the larger ship was a Jedi release. Was it Empire? It was certainly later than this one anyway.
Yeah, I would say Jedi. Yeah,
I think it was a Jedi one, wasn't it? So they for some reason, as it was kind of thinking back to the film, they were yellow in the film, the paint on them. So it's interesting why they've gone for this red scheme. No idea, but I just think it looks beautiful. So it's a fantastic ship. And again, another one you could get in the special offer box with a nice backdrop.
And one of my favourites off the line, the Imperial Cruiser. Stunning ship. And again, this had probably my favourite little playability with it.
Yeah, the sliding hatch underneath with the... apparently it's Tantive E, isn't it? I can't say. It's Tantive 4. It'll always be Tantive 4 to me. So Tantive 4 comes out there, and the only way you could have Tantive 4 as a toy back in the day, and there it is, a tiny little white ship that just slots in underneath. It doesn't do a lot else. It's just a big metal triangle. But having that little door and the Tantive 4 there is a great feature. And it really does look good, that ship. It's very screen accurate, and as we discussed earlier, it's prone to the odd paint chip, so finding a nice one can be difficult. But I suppose one of the beauty of the diecast line is they are quite heavy, these ships, and if they are prone to popping out the bubbles if they're sent too many times in the post. You do find fairly frequently ones that have never been played with a box where either the bubble's fallen off or has broken through. Not that I recommend doing that deliberately, but it's not so hard to find a mint one if you want to pay a little bit more money for them. I
had a horrible experience with one of these. I can remember it was Christmas 2014, the first Secret Santa I'd done on the forum, and I was at Father's From, had a few beers, and we opened up our Secret Santas down, and I got one of them. And as soon as I opened it, I let go of it, and I snapped the little the bit on the top off.
No,
thinged across. I was just like, oh no, and it's got the Tantive in it and everything. I was just like, Oh no, such a nice example as well.
I've
Still got it, but haven't got around to gluing it yet. But I was just devastated. But
I don't think I've ever seen that damage on one, so I think you did well this year.
yeah,
You wouldn't be able to do that again if you tried.
no. Now the final ship in Wave 2 is the one that's seems to be the rarest and is by far the most expensive, and that's the TIE Bomber. Now, I always kind of got the impression it was the last ship released, but that's not the case, is it? Why is this so hard to come by?
It is hard to come by. I won't say that it's a myth, but it has got slightly legendary status. It was an Empire Strikes Back release, so we'll come to it in a minute. There's the Wave 3 that are all Empire Strikes Back releases, but nearly all the Wave 1s and all the Wave 2s were released on Empire Strikes packaging. So the TIE Bomber in an Empire Strikes Back box is actually, a sealed TIE Bomber in an Empire Strikes Back box is no rarer than the Falcon, the Y-Wing, or the Imperial Cruiser in the same packaging. That's my opinion. That's for me looking for examples of these things. But because they are all released in Star Wars packaging as well, loose, there's loads and loads more of the Y-Wing Falcon and the Imperial Cruiser and far fewer TIE Bombers. But to get a mint and box one, an Empire packaging, is actually no harder than the other ones. And so there's misinformation out there. So before I was putting the website together, I'd heard about this test run, this 75,000 figure. I wanted to know where they're from. I do research at work, and you've got to have a source. Where's this information come from? The guys on the Star Wars Collectors Archive couldn't remember, and a lot of to and froing. There didn't seem to be a reliable source for that random figure. So I've kept it on the website because it's out there. But personally, I don't believe it's a test run. It was issued to stores across the USA. There's evidence for that. There's adverts for various states, not just Ohio, Cincinnati, where the Kenner's offices were, factory. It is rare and it's lovely and that's great, but it's not special in that sense. And then when we move on to the Wave 3 ships, they're winding down the Wave 2 ones by that time. So you just don't see them anymore. If you go out and do a search for Millennium Falcon in an Empire Strikes Back box, I'll wager you'll find fewer for sale than you will TIE Bombers, because TIE Bombers are the ones that command a great price. So they tend to change hands a lot more frequently. In terms of the ship, it's another great one. It's movie accurate. The wings removed. The wings are a lot more solid than the smaller ties. So the pegs holding them on, seeing that they're no different. They're sort of white, one of those sort of four-sided Lego pieces, but they've got a better support around the edge for when the wings clip on. But another real oddity, this one's piloted by an Imperial Stormtrooper in Hoth battle gear. So it's just pick a figure, he'll be the pilot. That's the thought going behind it. But yeah, it's a lovely ship.
At least they were consistent in their strange choices.
Yeah.
It's so moving on to Wave 3, like you just said, all ESB ships now. We've got the Cloud Car, the twin pod Cloud Car.
Poor sad Cloud Car. I love this ship. It's perfectly accurate, but it really doesn't do anything, does it? So we were talking earlier, go to any toy show, you see diecast around. There's always a battered Cloud Car with loose feet. The feet don't stay in or out anymore. But that's its action feature. Has a brown foot that comes out of each pod, and it can either land or take off, and you put the feet in. But you look, compared to the earlier ships, the Wave 3 ones, there's a lot more detailed. So the Cloud Car pilots are actually painted. They've got their black goggles on. The helmets are painted. You can see who they're meant to be. It's a far cry from that orange Luke Skywalker who's in the X-wing that we were talking about earlier. Trying to find a nice mint one of these is very difficult, despite it.
Do you know what? I found quite a few. I say quite a few. We're probably talking 3 or 4 at boot fairs the last couple of years. But like you say, they're always really badly chipped and had a good old time in the past. But so we move on to Slave 1. Does this do much? Are we, with these Empire ones, have they got less features on them than what we'd seen previous?
That's a tricky one. This is not so dissimilar to the Falcon. So the rear gun swivel and the wings, is that what they are? The wings. So when he sort of flies, so Boba Fett sitting upright, they can go level. They're not weighted like the 3 3/4 inch one. You've got to move them yourself, and it doesn't have feet to land with like like the Falcon, but I think arguably they do have fewer features as a whole. Slave One has guns and wings that move, so is pretty good for this wave. But also, again, like the Cloud Car, a fantastic version of Boba Fett. Detailed paint job. You can see who's in there, and he's very clear. And these, I used to see these quite frequently for sale. They really have dried up over the last few years. I don't know whether that's popularity of Boba Fett or maybe just diecast getting a bit more popular. Another nice ship. Personally, don't own any, but that on an Ian Sanderson GW acrylic stand looks lovely.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then we get to the final one of the 11, the Rebel Armoured Snowspeeder.
This of the Wave 3, this is my favourite. For some reason, they've gone back to the crappy orange figures with no paint job on the pilot. So it was Luke and Dak, wasn't it, as the gunner?
Yeah.
The only feature being the swivel, the rotating harpoon gun. But for scale and accuracy, and we did as kids, I had kids up the road that had a couple of AT-ATs, and the diecast Snowspeeder was great, a bit like you parking your Falcon in the Death Star. They were great for flying through AT-AT's legs. The scale was far better, and just a lovely little ship. Another one that's tough to find without any paint chips. Not as hard as the Cloud Car, but yeah, getting an absolute pristine one is still fairly difficult.
Is there any evidence of any kind of plans to continue the line and what they were going to bring out, or was it like literally drawn a line over?
Not that I'm aware of. So with as you'll come to in a later show, with the micro collection, there were, there's lots of sort of production quality figures that go with later sets that close to being produced. There's designs for Return of the Jedi sets. For diecast, it just seemed to we've got these 3 ships out. Assume they're peg warmers. Right, let's call it a day. We just concentrate on the 3 3/4 inch figures. But yeah, I'd love if any photos or plans for other stuff in the Empire range or even Return of the Jedi. If that was out there, I'd love to see it. But I don't think it is. And what's telling as well, and a little bit like the larger ships, you can tell how popular a line is by its packaging. So I was just talking about the Wave 2 ships on Empire packaging being really hard to find. They were winding those up. The land speeder, I've seen a pre-production photo of a mock-up of a land speeder on an Empire card, but there doesn't seem to be one that was produced, although they did the X-Wing and the TIE Fighter. It's kind of, the land speeder's got nothing to do with Empire Strikes Back. Let's drop this one from the line. Maybe the scale came into that as well. And I suspect that if it had run on any longer, if there was a return line of toys, then we would have not seen the Snowspeeder or the Cloud Car anymore. We might have still seen Slave One just because Boba Fett's so popular.
So let's move on to licenses. Now, obviously you've touched on certain things already, but you show on your site 4, 6, 8, 9 different licenses to have them. So let's just go through them quickly. So you got Kenner, all 11 were released via Kenner. Kenner Canada. So straight away, the TIE Bomber is only released on Kenner. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, so the most that anyone's going to have is 10. So on the Kenner Canada,
you get 10 on Kenner Canada. Good run there. What you don't get with Canada is as many card variations. So with the licensees, much like the 3 3/4 inch line, Kenner United States, they keep changing the card backs just like the bigger toys. Kenner Canada do that for for Wave 1, and then it fizzles out. They don't for the Empire ones. What you see is what you get. You don't get all the Wave 1 ships on the Empire cards like you do with the United States of America. General Mills, which we're just going on to, that's a tough. I mean, it is a licensee. So these are sold in Germany. They are the Kenner cards, but they have this bluey green circular sticker in one of the corners. I've seen them with just the stickers as a circle. Some of them you can see sort of a perforation with a sort of larger. It's difficult to describe, a sort of off rectangle stuck on the side of it as well, and that's just got the General Mills address in Germany there. So basically they import a load of Kenner cards, probably from Britain, but could be from America. I suspect it is from Britain because we have them here, and then they just stick this sticker on them.
Can you just tell me what the word says that's underneath Deutsch?
Yeah, that's second language German. That would be Zweigneidslassung.
What does that mean?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
Are all the ships being found with this sticker on? Are they all available?
No. The Twin Pod Cloud Car, and off the top of my head, I think it's the Slave 1. I don't think the Snowspeeder's been found on that. So I suspect the Snowspeeder does exist with the sticker on, but I've not seen an example of it. So if anyone's listening out there that has one and wants to send in a photo, I would love to see it.
And then we move on to Palatoy.
So Palatoy is the next largest amount of ships are on Palatoy. So we've got all Wave 1 and all Wave 2. There is another licensee that also has that, which we'll come to in a minute. But Palatoy is interesting because they don't vary the card backs at all. So Wave 1, they're all 12 backs, including the Darth Vader TIE Fighter, which was a later release, even though it's Wave 1, is a later release in America. And we're going to come to Harbert in a minute. And so it gets a 12-back card in Britain for some reason. And then we've got the 3 Wave 2 ships, the Falcon, the Y-Wing, and the Imperial Cruiser. And then they stop after that. But we did have a plentiful supply of Wave 3 ships in Britain. So we had the Cloud Car, Snowspeeder, and Slave 1 were all sold here on Kenner cards. We didn't have an import sticker added onto that. But they're just as plentiful as the earlier releases.
And then we're on to Takara, so we're over to Japan now. Now,
are you going to get me to try and pronounce any of this stuff as well, Stu?
I might do in a minute, yeah. now in Japan, obviously, for each movie, the license changed with the toys. You had Takara, Poppy, and then Sakuda. Mm-hmm. So what happened? Did Takara just release the first wave, or did they keep the license?
Takara released the first wave and then lost the license. So like again on the 3 3/4 inch, you see Takara first 12 and then Return of the Jedi Sakuda. I'm not sure what happens Empire Strikes back in licensee terms in Japan, because the only ships you can get carded are the first 3 of Wave 1. So you can't get Darth Vader's TIE Fighter, you can get the Landspeeder, TIE Fighter, and X-Wing. Now they do a lot of other diecast ships, which at some point I will write an article on for the website. So I've got these Zetka,
yeah, that's right,
which are also Takara, but a totally different scale again, a different toy, and not released anywhere else. And you might have seen kind of not quite Transformers, but getting towards that line, R2-D2 and X-Wing fighters that shoot rockets. And there's a bit more to them. Again, they've got these sort of variants on a theme, which is a whole nother ball game. But presumably it'd be a good if we can get an expert in on those to have another edition of Diecast on the podcast.
Yeah, definitely an area to look at. That's right. So returning back to Europe, the next one we have is Clipper. Now,
I think Clipper's the hardest to find. Again, like Takara, you can only get 3 ships on Clipper. The first 3 from Wave 1, Landspeeder, X-Wing, and TIE Fighter. The TIE Fighter is surprisingly common. I see those pop up all the time. And I do wonder, and I didn't mention this with Takara, but you see a lot of Takara in Britain as well, TIE Fighters. And I do wonder if the demand for TIE Fighters back in the day was higher than the other ships, so they were getting overstock from elsewhere sent in. And they seem to be quite plentiful here. They are more plentiful in general, whether that's collectors bringing them in over here or whether they were originally imported over here. I don't know. Again, it'd be interesting if anyone remembers buying a Clipper or Takara off the shelf back in the day. But past the TIE Fighter, I don't think I've ever seen a Landspeeder or an X-Wing for sale. They certainly not in the UK. Very rare, hard to find. They're released in the Benelux countries, so Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. And certainly amongst the Belgium collectors, there's a lot of people on the lookout for these. It's their childhood, and they're really tough to find.
Is the Clipper, is their logo printed on the card like you got on like the 12-inch figures, or is it more wrapped around sticker like we saw on?
No, it's
figures?
printed.
It's printed.
All the licensees on the card backs are printed, unless it's an import sticker at the top, like the General Mills that we've discussed, or another licensee, which we'll come to in a minute.
Yes, so we move on to Harbert. Again, this is just Wave 1, just the 3 again, is it? Or is Darth Vader TIE available?
So it's not got as many as Palatoy, so we haven't got the Wave 2 with Harbert, but we do have the Darth Vader tie, so it's the next most plentiful for the European countries to Palatoy. Darth Vader tie is very hard to find, which makes me think that the plug was pulled not long after it was released, and there's plenty of Darth Vader focus collectors out there that give their eye teeth for a Harbert carded Darth Vader tie. See the one on the website is a very crude reseal. I've seen that for sale for twice in the last, since this website was done. Was that 4 years ago now? Is it 5 years? God, time flies. But certainly the last 4 years, I've only seen one for sale, and I've seen it come up for sale twice, and that's that one on the website. But interestingly, the other ships seem to be released on 12 and 21 backs, which is unusual. I haven't got examples of all of them. The Landspeeder definitely is on both. I assume the others are. They're quite rare. Landspeeder seems to be relative. I think the X-Wing's probably the rarest of those three. Landspeeder, relatively common. And much like the Clipper tie that we're just talking about, the Harbert tie seems to be the most common. You see those quite regularly. So it's the Caccia tie, is it maybe? Italian.
Yeah, I was just looking at the names there.
I can do the Landspeeder for you, Stu. My Italian's pretty good there. The hovercraft scooter.
Can you do Darth Vader's tie for me?
So let's give that a go. That's the Caccia tie di Lord Darth Fener.
Love it.
Yeah, languages were never. I got an extra PE lesson at school rather than doing two languages. So.
Yeah, they are lovely, aren't they? The 12-back card with the Final Cape Jower as well, so kind of stands out a bit like the French Meccano cards.
And it's a great logo. And what's particularly nice about Harbert is that the Star Wars is translated as well. So we've got Guerre Stellari.
Yeah.
Whilst a lot of the others keep the English text. So I think it's nice seeing there's something that looks different, isn't it?
It is. So we head over to Australia. You got the Toll Toys lineup.
Toll Toys is probably on a par with Clipper. I probably might have seen slightly more of these around, but I don't know if it's the same ones changing hands. But that's another one where we just get the first three ships of Wave 1, Landspeeder, X-Wing Fighter, TIE Fighter. No translation issues here, and a nice Toll Toys logo up in the top right of the card. Doesn't seem to be any, unlike Harbert, doesn't seem to be any difference in the card back. So we just get the 12-back one with the Jawa, which reminds me actually that there is another slight difference between some of these. All of them, so they advertise the kid size action toys on the back for the 12 backs. You got Han Solo's blaster, the Stormtrooper rifle, and a yellow lightsaber. For some reason, I didn't mention it, we just talked about it, but Takara changed the colour of that lightsaber to red. I don't know why that is, why they would do that. That's effort, isn't it? There's effort where it doesn't need to be there. So it's whether yellow lightsabers had some unfortunate connotation in Japan, I don't know.
Yeah, interesting.
Their ones are red. But yeah, so not much to say about the Australian cards. Very similar. There was a recent discovery with I think it was a Kenner front. No, it was a Harbert front and a Toll Toys back, which was very odd.
Totally legit, hasn't been tampered with or anything.
I think it is legit. We've seen. I was again saying that very confident. It was Harbert. I think it was Harbert, possibly Kenner. It was a year or so ago. To double check my records, but it did look legit. But it was certainly two different countries mash up with a Toll Toys back. Didn't change hands for a big premium. It's one of those sort of accidental finds of the person that had it. And there's another example, not Toll Toys, but I think the source was Singapore. And I know that there's a sort of connection between the Australian market and Singapore, where there's a Star Wars, I can't remember, it's an X-Wing, Star Wars fronted X-Wing with an Empire Strikes back. So there's clearly some disconnect between the printing of the front of these cards and the printing of the back. And I don't know enough about the factory process, but arguably the different countries are printed in one factory and then shipped off, and so you get some mix-ups every now and then.
Now, the final license you've got is Meccano. Now, Meccano churned out most Star Wars toys, but these aren't the same as what you expect from Meccano, are they, as a card?
No. And very, very strange, actually, from what you say, because Meccano did do everything, and they didn't produce their own Meccano diecast card. So they just did the first three again, TIE Fighter, Landspeeder and X-Wing, and these are very, as we'll come to in a minute, they are the Clipper cards with a Meccano import sticker in the top right corner. I've already said I think Clipper is the rarest ones out there. So to find a Clipper with an import sticker on is even harder. Very few examples out there. I've seen a few on Facebook for sale. Landspeeder, we see more than others, but when the samples are 2 or 3, we're not talking a lot. In fact, Jason Joyner bought a Landspeeder along to farthest from Christmas before last, I think. So it was nice seeing one in the flesh. But I don't own one of these and would love to.
Yeah, you really need one for your Focus, mate.
I think going back to what I was just talking about, I think it was rather saying it was Ken with the Toll Toys back. It was Meccano Clipper front and Toll Toys back. That was the
right. So a bit of everything going on here.
Yeah. So I mean, it could be faked, but it would be an odd one. And my gut feeling is it's genuine. Were the Clipper and the Toll Toys printed in the same factory would be the obvious answer. There's not really a lot of difference between the card backs. We shall see, but yeah, these are very rare, and I'd love to own one.
So, just want to whiz through the card back. What there was, you've touched on, but maybe if people do want to know the card backs, there's a terrific matrix on your website. So go and check out that. We'll put a link to that, the matrix and the website in all our on all our social media. But was there diecast mailaways?
There were. They're a bit of a minefield. They seem to be. They're the mailaways, and they're American or Canadian, as in United States of America, and the various department stores they had there. So JCPenney, Sears, that kind of thing. There seems to be a difference in rarity, and as I say on the website, this is quite a specialist area, being in the UK and not having access to all this. It's slightly outside my comfort zone, but essentially the JCPenney ones seem to be the most common, and there's 2 waves. So you get the first boxes just have serial numbers on the front. They don't say what's in the box, don't even say Star Wars. And if you get one of those, it comes with a Star Wars mini catalogue advertising the toys. And then there's the second wave where they actually write on the box what's in there, and the brilliant quality control. Yet again, at Kenner, they can't even spell Star Wars right. It's a Star War diecast. X-Wing fighter, TIE fighter, Landspeeder, take your pick, and that comes in with the second issue Star Wars mini catalogue, which has a pink stripe across it from memory. There is, and this is where I get a little bit vague. I think for the Sears ones, the writing on the box is slightly different. Most of the ones I've seen have got the standard text that some of the JCPenney ones. So someone feel free to correct me if the Sears ones also have that text. But I've got a Landspeeder, which I understand to be Sears, so much larger printed numbers, no writing on that one. And then there's other ones as well, and ones. I mean, these are pretty rare. So I've seen. So the mailaways continue throughout the line. So. There's a folded carded cloud car, actually folded and put in a box and sold as a mail away, whilst the ones I've just been talking about all come wrapped in tissue paper. That's the packaging. I'm not sure how you tell what's original tissue paper and what isn't. That's a skill for someone out there. I certainly couldn't tell you. But so there's a whole load of stuff out there. That's a job for another day, picking that all apart. I would very much like to do it. Canada also had mailaways, and I've not found any examples of those at all. That's just chatting to Canadian collectors saying, yeah, we had those similar boxes. So I do need to work on that. Job for another day.
Yeah, sounds an interesting area still to think. And then and the card backs, you're talking. I think you've already mentioned a lot of it. You got 12 backs, 21 backs on Star Wars card. You've got 7 backs, or you've got them known as a 7 back, is it?
Yeah, it was really difficult to. And I do not to envy. I envy the simplicity of the carded figures, but I don't envy the numbers. I mean, I actually had quite an easy job of it. As you started off with, we've only got 11 ships. So that's that. Yeah. In terms of matrices, that's a fairly easy one to compile. So I had to come up with a way of differentiating. So I wanted to stick to the same kind of system as Jason's done for the Palatoy Matrix and Kellerman had done for the Kenner carded, and so the first ones that came out, so the Star Wars 12s, we've got the 12A and the 12B. It was another quality control thing. That the difference is the land speeder image is mirrored on the 12A. That's the only one that really exists for. Everything else is the card wasn't changed, but they have 12. They have the 12 figures, the first 12 figures on the back. So that's why they're the Star Wars 12As and Bs, because they've got 12 figures on. The 21 backs is exactly the same, so it mirrors the 3 3/4 inch. We've got the figures on the back, and we've got Boba Fett making it up to 21. The Canadian cards don't have him, so for the 12s go up to the 20, but that's dealt with as on the Canadian page rather than on the card back variations. But then, yeah, as you say, we go up to the 7s, and then we're talking the ships. So for Wave 1, they show figures on the back. For Wave 2, so that's the Y-Wing, Millennium Falcon, and Imperial Cruiser, they then start advertising what other diecast ships you can get on the back. So that's why it's a 7 back, and they're on the boxes. So it's a box that shows image of what the ship does, its action features, and then it's got the 7 ships underneath. And interestingly, they haven't even got the actual images of the Wave 2 ships. They've got sort of polystyrene style prototypes. So when you look at the Millennium Falcon on those, it's very crude. The next one, so I talked about that era before, calling the Falcon and the Y-Wing the Empire's largest spacecraft. They correct that, but not they do the special offers first, and their special offers do intrigue me. So it's almost like the special offer is to try and shift more in a line, isn't it? So they obviously think that they're not selling enough at the time. They put these backdrops in them, try and shift a few more, but they haven't corrected the error on the back.
Right.
And that's a sticker. That's a sticker that goes across the. They then correct the writing for the 7B. So it's still they're all the same box, but there's now Han Solo's Millennium Falcon spaceship and the Rebel spacecraft used to attack the Death Star for the Y-Wing. So they've corrected that. And then, just to confuse it even further, the next one we get is 31 back, and we're back to having figures. Could have stuck with the number of diecast spaceships on the back, but because it's predominantly advertising the figure line, it seemed to make sense. But everything after that is based on all 11 ships. Probably could have done with someone a bit more logical working alongside me. Maybe there was an easier way to distinguish between them.
Just how we get with the figures, there's an awful lot of reproductions. Do you get many reproduction parts come on the market? Have people remade like? They
do. I wouldn't say there's many. It's not something that's blighted the hobby in the way that reproduction weapons have with the figures. So I've found there's a few people selling reproductions on eBay, and I bought a set of some just so I could have them in hand, so I could compare them and see how easy they were to tell. The things like the land speeder screen was pretty good. Y-Wing bomb was pretty good, but you could tell in hand. But things that they do reproduction, Darth Vader's for the TIE Fighter and the Darth Vader TIE Fighter.
Really?
Yeah, but they were really obvious because the colours are wrong. So where in the original ones the pulley out bits grey and and Darth Vader's black and slides onto that, it was there's a slight variation. So he's got like there's a black ring around Darth Vader, which is an instant tell. But there are other makers of reproductions out there who I suspect have corrected these. I mean, it's once you have these things in hand, it's like the weapons. Once you have them in hand, you can normally tell by feel. They're just the plastic isn't the same as vintage plastic. I've not seen any reproduction metal to the actual die-cast parts. I suppose one of the other things to watch out for is, particularly with the TIE bombers, fetches a lot of money, the whitening. So we've seen that with stormtroopers and some of the ships. People do try and pop off the yellowed bits of the TIE bomber and whiten that. And again, I bought a partial TIE bomber relatively recently, and I suspect that's one that's been that's been whitened because the yellowed front bit next to the cockpit with the stormtrooper in is kind of powdery to the feel. It's for start, it's white, which is an instant tell because they nearly all are slightly yellow, so it's white, but it's got this sort of powdery texture, which seems a tell to me. I've not knowingly had a whitened stormtrooper to compare it with, so I don't know if the same kind of thing happens with the plastic there. It's not a major concern. I think the cockpit glass, you do need to be a bit careful. The main difference between the reproduction and the original is air bubbles in the glass that I've seen. I suspect with 3D printing, some of the other bits might get better over time, but at the moment, I wouldn't be overly concerned if you're trying to put together a loose run of diecast.
I'm quite surprised there's so many reproductions. Actually, I get the windscreen shield and that, but I wouldn't have thought many of the pilots were missing from the tyres and whatnot.
They do. They get a bit loose and do fall out, but the cost of buying the reproduction parts is on a par with an original one anyway, and it doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense to me. And they're not. We talked earlier that they are rarer than the figures. Fewer were made, but there's still plenty around. If you want a complete land speeder, TIE fighter or X-wing, you can find one without much effort. You don't need to put a reproduction part in there. I'm not here to talk about the rights and wrongs of reproduction. That's as far as I'm concerned, that's someone else. That's your own call. I've got my opinions on it, but there's no need to, in my mind. You can find original pretty easy at the same price as reproduction anyway.
These were all sold in display bins, weren't they?
The American ones were. I don't think we had bins over here. Certainly none of the photos I've seen show the bins. And I've got 2 headers and a bin myself, and both sourced from America. And again, talking to other collectors, I think that's where theirs came from. But the headers for the bins also follow the same pattern as the toys. So it's a Wave 1 bin and header. So Landspeeder, TIE Fighter and X-Wing. And then the Darth Vader tie is released shortly after, so still included in Wave 1. So they update the header to include the Darth Vader tie. It's exactly the same image. They've just shoehorned a Darth Vader tie in, chasing an X-Wing over Tatooine, so they can show the Landspeeder as well. And they just change the colour of the text on to make it a little bit different. And as we see with the carded figures, and also the diecast, when they go to 21 backs, the diecast lose their long play logo because I assume kids' parents were sending stuff back saying it's broken, it's not long play, so they start taking that off, and the header's no different, so it's still Kenner but no long play. I've never seen a Palatoy or a box and header from a different country. No. This is where I've seen that mock-up of an Empire Strikes Back Landspeeder. I've never seen one out there in the wild, so I assume it was just done for a photo in an Empire Strikes Back bin. But again, never actually seen that. And I don't know whether the bin was actually updated in the shops when the header was updated. So when the TIE Fighter was added, did they update the bin? There is an image that shows a second issue header with a different bin, but, and this is something I've only just realised talking to you, Stu, the Darth Vader TIE Fighter is in a different position and the writing's still yellow. So I wonder whether this is even, this is just mocked up for this image like the Empire Strikes Back one, and almost certainly wasn't in the shops because I've never heard anyone talk of this second issue bin.
Something else for you to go and investigate.
Yeah.
Never ending, mate. Never ending. To me, since I came back into collecting 7-8 years ago, the prices of diecast haven't risen massively. It's gone up a bit, but not like the rest of the hobby. I was just looking on Tracker today to see what the averages were, and you go through them carded. The average Landspeeder 138, X-Wing 110, TIE Fighter 125. The Vader tie, the average on there is, he's got it down to £73. So they're still very, very good prices, you know.
They are, yeah. And in America, I'd say it's even cheaper still. It seems to be, just for me, watching sales, $100 for, not a mint condition, but a decent 7 or 8 maybe, X-wing, TIE fighter or land speeder. You can still get them. They do seem to be a little bit more expensive here, but great value. There do seem to be loads of Kenner Darth Vader TIE fighters. And that was interesting, actually. The tracker figure there is £73. It's a slightly bigger ship. Do they get battered a bit more? I don't know. In fact, actually, I need to upgrade mine. It's got a big sticker tear on it, but and I've been looking for a decent one for a long time, and never quite found one worth upgrading to. So to find them in pristine condition is difficult, but they're certainly good value. The boxed ships being a bit harder to find. So the Wave 2, I've seen a rise in those. So certainly 10 years ago, you could get a Kenner Falcon or Y-Wing for probably maybe like £100, maybe a little bit more. Certainly seem to be paying 150, 200 these days for those. And then for the rarer different licensees, they're the ones that seem to have the biggest change. So I think 10 years ago, a bit more, there were fewer people collecting diecast and not necessarily interested in those foreign lines. I suppose much, get the story of collecting the 3 3/4 inch figures. That was back in the day. No one was interested in Tri-Logo or Palatoy. We just want the Kenner stuff, the original. Fast forward 20 years or so, it's a completely different story. It's the other stuff that's fetching the high money. And diecast seems to be going a little bit that way, but still not comparable. I mean, that's why I love it. If you want to get a Harbour carded figure, what's that going to set you back? £500,000, something like that.
Yeah, quite easily.
Yeah. It's much less than that for diecast. Condition, as long as you're not condition sensitive, you can still get sealed Harbour TIE fighters for a couple of £100. It's good value.
Well, I was looking at the if you were getting into diecast in order to put together a loose run, even that on Tracker. Now, I know Tracker may well have, I don't know what the condition of the ships is, so it might have to be taken into account of things, because like the Falcon, for example, there was 60 odd sales on there. The highest value one sold was £65. The lowest was £1. So, condition, I know is going to alter that, but the average.
65 seems a lot to me, but
it is. The average for the Falcon was £13. To be honest with you, they're all between like £10 to £15. Apart from the only ones that were particularly more expensive, Darth Vader's TIE loose was around the £25 mark average. Yeah. Y-Wing was about £20. Again, I don't know whether that includes the bomb, whether that's bringing the average price down on there.
I think it is. Yeah, I think £20 for a Y-Wing with a bomb, that seems a very good deal. I would have thought 30, 35 for one with a bomb, similar to the Cruiser actually. So Cruiser with the with Tantive 4 is going to be the 30 plus. Without, I would have thought you can get those for 10, 15 because they're quite plentiful. But actually getting one with a little spaceship in, that's tough to do.
It's obviously the TIE Bomber is the thing that kicks the price up.
And that has jumped in price. So when I was, I regret this a lot. When I was starting collecting carded figures and things, back in around 2006, I bought a few diecast ties back then, but I wasn't really looking at TIE bombers and I wasn't thinking of putting together a full run of diecasts at that time. But I did want a TIE bomber, and at that time you could get them for around about £60. This back in 2006. TIE bomber was £60, but I wanted, and I haven't changed at all now. Exactly the same with other things like this. But I wanted one for £50. I didn't want to pay 60. I wanted to pay 50, and so I just kept passing. Fast forward, what's that? 14 years. They've got to be 300 loose now, something like that.
Well, that's what's quite interesting. So on Tracker for the last year in 2019, they've only got 4 loose recorded on here. Now there's 3 in America, one at 175, one at 203, and one at 239.
Okay.
But there's one in Britain which was sold in January this year, and that sold for 447, which pushes the average up. So it's saying the average is 266 on here.
That's because I see them sell on Facebook relatively frequently, and 300 there seems to be a going rate. But it doesn't surprise me at all. Facebook is more expensive than eBay. It's a fact. It doesn't matter what anybody says on Facebook. You pay more there than you would on the auction site. So that's quite nice to know that you can get them for the couple of hundred mark if you keep watching. I mean, I did get a loose tie bomber in the end and didn't pay much for it at all. But its wings are glued on. But that for 300, that used to be the price for a boxed one, a sealed boxed one.
Yeah, well, there's only one box one in the last 12 months on here, and that sold for £607.
Okay, so that's not changed much then at all. I remember farthest from 5-6 years ago, 600. There's one there for about 600. I've seen them go for around the £1,000 mark on Facebook for very nice examples. I don't think anyone should really be paying more than that, but because it's got that legendary status, they put the carded figure values onto the diecast and factor up, and it's just not worth it. 600 for a box one sounds like a good price and a sensible price to me.
To be fair, I've just pushed that back so it takes in an extra 2 years. So the last 3 years, if you're taking the last 3 years' sales, the average for the box has gone up to 741. And a loose just short of 300, 294. So perhaps
is that kind of indicating then that there's been that frenzy of people buying stuff after Force Awakens?
Yeah, maybe a slight drop. We've seen it across other toys lines, haven't we? Maybe just a little bit of a dip, but I don't think too much on the Tie Bomber. I did add it up. If you went with the average prices off of Tracker for the last year to put together a full, complete loose run, you're talking about £410.
It's a bargain, isn't it?
It is, but I'm not sure. Like I said to you, I think some of those loose prices, maybe about £10 light on some of them.
Yeah, it doesn't seem. Yeah, it didn't seem too far off to me. I was chatting to a fellow collector, I won't mention names, farthest from this Christmas, who just put together a sealed Palatoy carded run, and that was off the top of my head for about 900, because he was asking me what I thought a carded run should cost. That's the Wave 1 ships, so not the box ones. So from the Landspeeder to Darth Vader tie, and independently came up with exactly the same figure. If you think that's probably one 12-back figure, is it?
Yeah.
If you're lucky, you can get all 4 carded ships about the cost of a 12-back figure, give or take. They are tough to find. The tie seems to have dried up quite a lot, and the Darth Vader tie is really scarce these days, but they do come up from time to time. I think there's a Darth Vader tie on eBay at the moment for a couple of thousand, if not more. That's way too much for a Palatoy, one of those. But so it's good value, fun and good value, Stu. What more can be said?
Exactly. But yeah, you're talking about Palatoy. I've just done that on the last 3 search. The TIE Fighter on a Palatoy on Tracker, he's only got 1 recorded in the last 3 years.
400, was it, around there, that sort of mark?
No, just under 200 quid, that one. But where that's been picked up, I have no idea. But that was in May 2017.
So that's kind of peak interest, isn't it? I do wonder if we might see a few people losing the bug the further we get away from the films. Be interesting, wouldn't it? So that's a discussion for another day. We'll start seeing some of these scarcer things, whether it be the figures or the diecast ships, appearing back on the market. I suspect there's a lot of people with these things locked away, and we might.
Yeah, I just wonder when Force Awakens obviously went crazy, but whether some people have got too much money invested in it and people won't pay the money that maybe they priced. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's whether they'll take a loss on it, but time will tell, won't we? We will see.
Yeah. And at the moment, as you just said, when there's only one Palatoy TIE Fighter on Tracker, if one does come up to sale in an auction, there's going to be a lot of people that want it. So, I've got 400 in my head as a sort of reasonable price for one. It could go for much more. I don't know.
Yeah.
Time will tell.
Please check out the website. What is the website again, Andy?
It is www.vintagestarwarsdiecast.co.uk.
It's fantastic. It's lots of images on there. The cardback matrix, It's got all the toys, write-ups about the toys, the licenses. It's got some featured articles which are brilliant on there as well, which is well worth going to check out. Bits around Colin Cantwell, the concept artist. We haven't touched on anything like that, so go and check all that out because it is fantastic. Put all our links all into our social media, so make sure you check out Facebook, Instagram and Twitter by searching Generation Skywalker. You can email us at generationskywalker@gmail.com. Check out the YouTube channel. Again, just search Generation Skywalker and visit the website at generationskywalker.com. Andy, thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Stu. It's a pleasure, and good luck with the new venture in this podcast. I'm sure it's going to be a big success. And I've just got to also say, thanks to you for challenging me to do the website in the first place. When you had me on the Vintage Rebellion podcast, it was you saying do this, and also all the other diecast collectors out there who I really couldn't have done this on my own. There's so much information out there, and that's why it was created in the first place. I wanted to know what card backs I could find TIE fighters on, and there was no source. So by the community getting together, fronting it here, made the website. But yeah, there's a lot of information from a lot of people that's gone into making this. So thanks to all of them. Yeah,
it's to be honest with you, Andy, I know you've said it a couple of times, like, I couldn't have done this without this person. But you've taken the information and you've put it together. And whenever I need to know anything about diecast, I've worked on TVR for 5.5 years. All right, this hasn't been launched yet, but we've been working behind the scenes for 6 months. Every time you need something diecast, you go to this site and it's on there. So it's a great resource for anybody that's needing that. So thank you for the time and effort you put into it. It is appreciated.
Cheers, Stu.